I am with Austin Bonderer. He's a patent attorney, not just one, but three offices, and he's been involved in 700 patent applications being passed and a significant amount of experience. Very grateful to have you on the show. So thank you so much for joining me. I know you're very busy. I wanted to start off letting you know yesterday I had David Osk on. He was the inventor of StatGuard Plus, which is essentially the thermostat cover with a combination lock. So all iterations before that just had a key. He added one more thing, but and this is what I wanted to share with you, Austin, because I think you can really speak to this right off the bat. The thing that I think he did very well is he set timeline expectations and he hit the lottery. He's in Home Depot. He did what a lot of product inventors' dreams are. He's in the big box store, but I think his timeline was around 5 to 6 years from idea, on a piece of paper to landing that big contract was five. And that's a nail-bitingly long period of time before you make a dollar on something. So can you speak to that as far as people's expectations?
Well, it's the same. It should be the same expectation as starting a business. I mean, you know, it takes a while. You need to gain market space. You have to get out there. People don't know about you yet. I guess one of the big misconceptions that a lot of people get into this patent space with is that if I have this great new idea, I'm going to find a company that's going to want to invest in my idea, pay me to do it, take all the risk, and then make me rich. That's not how it generally happens. So that's one of the first things I explain is you need to kind of have a business plan. You need to bring it to market. You need to show the marketability. And then once you do that, hopefully someone, if you want the exit plan, that's where it comes in. Your patent really becomes very valuable, is because that's what secures your market space that these big people want. But you've also built a brand name. You've also done all the goodwill. So I always tell people the invention and the patent, while not easy, it's the easy part of everything you got to do to make this thing work.
That's right. And that's going to be a shock to some people because they look at that as the obstacle when that's really a very preliminary step. And I said before the show, look, I'm a nobody. I guarantee you, Austin, you didn't know who I was until I reached out to you on Podmatch. So I'm a very small business owner. However, I have an attorney on retainer. And anytime there's I can't tell you the number of problems that have gone away that I just pick up the phone and, everything from, and thankfully it hasn't happened in many, many years, but everything from being pulled over for speeding to what have you. Anytime
Yeah.
there's anything at stake, my attorney's involved. No joke. And in the cases, and I had Doug Katz, an inventor, on who invented the Nulu knife, and he had friends that went through really bad legal things because they didn't protect their the intellectual property assets. So I'm sure you would agree with me in get legal advice very early in the process. But at what point do you think you feel like they're ready to pick up the phone and to reach out to someone like you?
Well, if you think you may have an invention, that's obviously a trigger point. And then, but the question people typically ask is, how do I know if I have something that's patentable or
Okay.
whatever? And I'm like, all patents are solutions to problems. So if you came up with a solution to a problem, call someone, talk to them. Don't talk to anybody else. I get it. Super cool. You're super excited. You solved this cool problem. You came up with this cool idea. Don't brag about it. If you need to brag about it, call a patent attorney, brag about it to him. That is confidential. And that's because disclosure is what kills patents.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, disclosure damages legal cases too. If
Of course.
and I don't want to go into Monica. I think it's Monica Metz's issue, but I think her and Rogue got into it, and they were going to do business with her. She went in alone, like a sheep amongst the wolves with no legal protection, probably gave them too much information, which no attorney would allow. And like I said,
Right.
I'm a big fan of attorneys. And I was a fraud investigator, so I fought attorneys all day long, but I understand their role was important too, and I respect it because I think all of these different attorneys and in place hold the system together. I think if, because I'm in insurance, so if the insurance company, the body shop, or the customer, if any one of those three have too much power, the whole system falls apart. So everybody has to be smart and engaged in the process. And sometimes all three parties have an attorney, which, when the stakes are high, you need protection. And let's face it, I can get on Wikipedia and talk to AI all day, but it's never going to replace the boots on the ground experience and probably the possible courtroom experience that you've had yourself, because you can have a great plan, but you know, the process might be different. Now, you came through this both as an inventor first, then worked at the patent office, USPTO, and then as an attorney. So what's unusual about you as far as podcast guests? A lot of people have done a lot of different things and they settled into this wonderful thing. It sounds like you were just dyed in the wool. You were born for this. So can you tell us about your first invention and how this journey started?
Yeah, so basically what it was, I mean, it's kind of a backstory. Grew up in southern Mississippi. My dad's house almost burnt down. So that summer, he had me crawl up in the attic wiring this old smoke detection system. And so when I went to school, my undergrad was civil engineer, and we had to do a thesis. And I'm like, I've always had this idea of a wireless smoke detection system, a relay system. And I know for a fact that I was the first one to come up with this. I just didn't have the investment to help me pursue this as a patent, but it was the basis of my thesis paper. So I basically took what was it? Those smoke detectors, and remember those first wireless doorbells that came out?
Oh yeah.
So I jerry rigged this thing to basically do when the smoke detector went off, it did an audible sound and it did a wireless sound, which would cause the other one to go off and then send a wireless sound. And the idea would be that you relay. So no one had to go in the attic. I mean, people have these things now. And this happens to all inventors. Hey, man, I had that idea. I should have done something with it. It came out after the fact. You know why? Because the problems are there. Someone's going to solve it if you don't provide the solution first. And if you do come up with a solution first, the only way to make money off of that is to protect it with patents or some other IP.
That's right. You could be driving Bezos's yacht instead of Bezos,
Well,
because
I don't know about that.
you would have because I know you because you've already scaled your law firm, so you would have scaled that. You would have not just been the fire detection guy. I'm sure you would have come up with, you would have been in that space. But you know what?
Right.
I have a close friend who's probably watching now from Pascagoula, Mississippi, and
Oh, okay.
he's gonna. As we say in the country, local boy does good. You did real well for
Right.
yourself either way. So
That's
as an
where my
ex
dad actually grew up. So he
oh,
actually went to Pascagoula High School. So yeah.
no way. I've been down that way. I've done some fishing down there and
Okay.
the food on the Gulf Coast. I'm here in Central Florida, south of Orlando. They have no clue how to cook here. I love it. I love the fishing. There's a lot of I love about Central Florida. The cooking's not where it's at. You got to get along I-10 there if you want a good meal. So
Yeah, you do. So
where are you calling in from now? Because I know you have offices in three different places.
I'm actually calling in from the Fairhope, Alabama.
Fairhope, Alabama. Okay, so yeah,
Yes.
good po' boy sandwiches and
A lot of fried seafood. It's so good.
yeah, I love it.
It
I
don't
miss
kill
it
you.
so bad. I miss it so bad. Well, that's fantastic. I also wanted to give some basics for our audience too, because everybody's at a different level of sophistication, understanding trademarks. The two things I think of, and I wrote about it very, very briefly in my book because I wanted to just touch on it, and I did encourage people to get legal representation and how to a little bit about filing the to apply at USPTO. But the two things that I talk to people about before I send them to somebody like you is that the idea has to be novel, in other words, brand new and non-obvious. Now, there's several other pillars that I think it should fit, but those are the two that come to mind. If someone is analyzing an idea, what else should they think of in as far as the novelty that's never been done before, and it's not something obvious that somebody could just put together off the top of their head?
Well, that's the biggest one is the obvious. Well, I guess the other part would be marketability. Don't go down this path. Don't go down this process unless you think there's a market for it.
Sure.
Otherwise, you're just going to have a very expensive piece of paper that you put on your wall. So that would probably be the other. But obviousness is the hard one because what is obvious to you is not obvious to me. And while there's one patent office, there's really like 8,500 patent offices because each patent examiner gets to make their own decision. They have their own paradigms, and that's what we're generally working with. So sometimes it's, hey, we're on the same page, and then sometimes it's like, that's not obvious, and he's like, yes, it is, and that's the end of it, and you're just going back and forth. So that can be the difficult part. And there's no guarantees in this. Just because something is novel, which means new, and new is the easiest part because it means just not the same. It's what are the differences between the prior art and your idea, and is that difference obvious? And that's the part that I generally, you know, that's a good part of my business, is working with examiners trying to reach a conclusion on what is not obvious.
How often, Austin, when somebody comes to you for the first time, that you say to them, that's because, I get pitched because I'm not necessarily in that space, but I'm somebody I can reach out, they can reach out to. Usually the idea is very raw and underdeveloped when they talk to me about it. Do you ever send people back to the drawing board, not necessarily to change their idea, but to add a little more meat to the bone, so to speak?
Sometimes, I mean, generally when I clients, the thing about a patent is it doesn't have to be your working model. If you have the general idea of what's going to happen, we can generally write it in such a way that it's going to cover whatever comes out, as long as it's within that scope. You definitely want to marketability, but sometimes you want to start that patent route at the same time you're doing that research route. You want to do a prior art search because you don't want to spend all this time on research if at the end of the day it's out there already. Two, if you do a prior art search at the beginning, sometimes you're going to get some ideas that may help you with your idea, because I call it shaking the tree. As soon as you tell an intelligent person about your idea, guarantee you they're going to have some little suggestion. And the same with you. If you see what everybody else has done through the results of the research of the prior art search, it may help you develop even a better idea at the end.
That's a great answer, and it plays right into one of the chapters of my book where I say I encourage them to go to even the crowdfunding sites to see what somebody's trying to get money for. I said go in and see what the recent patents are. I said if somebody doesn't have a niche or a product idea, so my book is for people that have no idea what they wanted. They're starting from a completely blank slate, and I
Right.
talk about both products or services and how they can through the process of discovery. So the kind of the left brain part of the book where you're doing searches to figure out what to do is I said you've got to at least have an industry. You got to at least start somewhere. And I said look at patents in that industry, look at fundraising in that, and look at their iteration of that device, and then figure out okay, whereas in your case you had a problem that you wanted solved and then you wanted to invent that, and that's what a lot of people do. But again, my book is blank slate. Where do you go? So I told them to go to the USPTO, not to steal people's ideas, but to riff on them and see how that process works, because sometimes, like exactly like you said, by looking at something else it'll jog your mind in a could be something completely different. And I even say, because I think the biggest problem with products and services is everybody says, you know what, I'm going to start something and I'm going to be better and I'm going to be cheaper. So they go head to head competitive, which I think is the worst thing to do, because there's also complementary products and companion products that
Right.
nobody ever thinks about. And just attach your thing to my desk. You can't see it. It's full of all kinds of camera junk that some guy invented. He's got a patent on some little thing here. I don't even know what this does, honestly. And the guy's probably rich,
Right.
so anytime a new iPhone comes out, there's things that need to attach to it. Any big major product, find your thing and attach it to something else that exists. It's going to make marketing a lot easier. Do you guys deal with that in your office too, where you see how a product can be utilized and then you try to expand that into utilization in another, to use something in a more novel way or in a different way?
Yeah, I mean, part of the benefit, I think, of having a patent attorney as opposed to trying to do this stuff yourself is inventors tend to be very focused on this is my idea, 100%. It's got to be the specific metal, the specific shape, and all the stuff. Whereas the attorney is like, let's pull it back. Let's say it can be any metal that has some sort of property, and therefore you're covered with all of that. And then it's not limited to this space, it's not limited to this exact spot. Those are the things that we try to do because when you use patents, it's not only a sword, it's supposed to be a defense. So I tell people we try to box out like we do in basketball. You try to make so much space that people can't even get to your narrow product. So you want your patent to cover more than what your product is. And too many times inventors go in there and they're just so, I love my idea, which is good. They need to be driven. They need to know the product that they're going to produce. But you got to talk to someone else and be like, well, we're trying to get you more protection than just your narrow little thing, because we all know, and you've seen it, people are willing to pay less for inferior products. So the
That's right.
knockoffs are there. And a little side bit that I tell everyone I work with is that, when you have a patent on something and you're going to market with it, you should already have your knockoff behind you.
So I agree with that in the sense that hopefully I'm understanding that correctly because what I even mentioned in the book, it doesn't have that much IP. It's just one section, but there's a lot
Right.
in it where I said, think like your competitor, think how they're going to knock it off. And I said, patent that design too. I said, have
Right.
I said, lock up as much. So think about it as real estate. I like metaphors. You want to,
Yeah.
if you know oil is in Charleston County, you want to buy, or if you know the highways coming through, right? You
Right.
want to buy up as much land as you can, and intellectual property is the same way. It's real estate. It's either
Yes.
so domain names is our internet real estate,
Right.
and we're talking about buying up the intellectual property real estate. So you now have 1,000 acre intellectual property farm instead of that little thing
Right.
that does that little thing.
Well,
So how
that's
do you
why, I mean, in a weird way, that's why they call them claims. I mean, like a land
that's
claim, it's your
that's
claim,
right.
it's your claim. But it is part of that too. When I talk to my inventors, I say, when we're writing this thing, now think like your competitor. But what I'm saying is that when you own the patent rights, a lot of times what you should do as a business coming out afterwards is develop your own knockoff. So you have a price point here and you have a price point here.
Oh, I see.
So you have a brand name here and a brand name here. So you're catching all the market. Don't just limit yourself to this because, you know, people always want the high end and, you don't want to lose the market share on the low
I,
end. So
I
if
love
you have the
that.
patent,
Yeah.
yes, don't do it under the same name, obviously, like
Yeah.
BMW and Minis. They're not same company, same manufacturer, but, not the same.
Be your own competitor. Yeah, I can see the value in that. Yeah, if I do a third edition, I'm gonna I'll put that in there because it's brilliant because like I said, a lot of people will say I'm going to do it better and cheaper, but if the better and cheaper already exists, boom, you're right. That's gonna drive a lot of people away. Now,
Right.
you obviously get a lot of phone calls, emails, requests to take a look at things. If you could remove one misconception from a caller's mind before they reach out to you or insert some idea into their mind before they call you, if you had a magic wand, what would that be?
Disclosure. Don't tell anyone. I mean, the whole point is that the United States is pretty lenient when it comes to disclosure. I mean, but there's a year uh, clock from the first public disclosure to the time you need to file a patent application. Now, if during that time someone comes up with the idea and files before you do, they win. End of story. They don't even care if you invented it first. But disclosure kills patents in any other country. Like for the most part, I mean, obviously there's some exceptions, but generally the big countries in Europe and Asia, any public disclosure before you file for a patent application will prevent you from getting a patent application or being able to enforce the patent you get. So my suggestion is keep your mouth shut. Just quiet. Don't say anything to anyone. Talk to an attorney. There is some discussion on what constitutes public disclosure, but just pretend that any disclosure is public disclosure. You shouldn't do it.
You said something in another interview that really blew me away, and I wanted to bring it in, and because it was so good. You talked about, and of course, we're talking about keeping your mouth closed and not disclosing your idea. So it's the really kind of a two-part question. One, if you're going to talk to a friend about it, somebody that's in your trusted network, should you have them sign a non-disclosure? So there's that part. And then second, you talked about the difference between, because when you do file for a patent, that is publicly searchable, because I was recommending people to do that. And you said if it's valuable as a trade secret, just keep it a trade secret. I thought, oh, that's brilliant. I'd never in a million years would have thought about that. Can you walk us through that? Because I think that's an incredible idea.
Right. So the NDA, let's go back to that. So
Hmm.
you want to tell your best friend, well, guess what? Your best friend's not offering any. So an NDA is a contract. In a contract, you have to have quid pro quo, something for something.
I see.
So you're giving them a secret. What are they giving you in response?
Uh,
Nothing.
Nothing.
You're just saying, hey, keep this quiet. And if they're not giving you anything in return, then there's no contract. So what I say, if you really want to tell your best friend, make it more like you're trying to tell your best friend because you're trying to get some ideas from them, where your NDA should say, I'm hiring you as a consultant, I'm paying you 50 bucks, 100 bucks, and any idea that you come up with will belong to me. And therefore you have a binding contract and a binding NDA, and that's not just a promise. You know, NDA with that is not a valid contract is nothing, just saying pinky swear. But we promise not to tell anybody. That's not a binding contract. That's not a valid NDA. So that's where a lot of people get in trouble is, or can get in trouble if these things blow up in lawsuits and stuff in the future. The NDA that you signed is not valid because there was no consideration from the other party or
That
from
makes a
your
lot
point.
of
You
sense.
just, there was nothing to make them keep it secret. You didn't pay them, you didn't give them anything. They just promised not to tell anyone. And then the second part of the question, what was it again? It was the
About
trade
the,
secret.
yeah, trade secrets. Wow, that
Yeah.
blew me away. Go ahead.
Yeah. So take a lot of things like methods of manufacture. How are you going? It's very hard to enforce those. Now, sometimes it's just impossible to keep those a trade secret because everyone on the production floor is going to see it. But, take Coca Cola, trade secret, been a trade secret forever. No one can get Coca-Cola. If the secret was about to get out because one of the employees that knew it, they could have injunctions, they could do all the things with the legal, because they've done everything possible to try to keep it secret. They've declared it a trade secret. They have these people under contractual obligations. And it's not one of those things that just, hey, everyone in my company knows this is a trade secret. No, it's got to be a real secret. Like you have to limit the knowledge to a select few. You need to compartmentalize. One of my favorite things was there was this restaurant in LA. I think it was called Crustacean, and the backstory was is that this lady, she was part of the royal court in Vietnam. She escaped, and her family just had this recipe for garlic noodles. So at their restaurant in LA, they have a kitchen inside a kitchen where only a select few know how to make the actual
My
garlic
God.
noodles. So when they order it, it comes in a slot. I haven't seen it, but the understanding is the order is like they tell the back kitchen to make it, the kitchen inside the kitchen, they put out the noodles, and then the other people are able to do everything else. So they maintain that as a trade secret.
Wow. I, and it's funny, I'm from Kentucky, and my father actually worked on Colonel. He's not wasn't a real colonel, but Colonel Harlan Sanders. Before he had his restaurants, Dad worked on his Cadillac when he was just selling the bags of the spices. And I remember him telling me, because I was a little kid, I think, or maybe not even around when he did that, and he said, "Son, it was the dirtiest car I'd ever seen," because he was sleeping in his Cadillac, driving from chicken shack to chicken shack down south, selling these bags of herbs and spices. And of course, his intellectual property was the 13,
Yeah.
and it's, as far as I know, it's never been revealed, and it's in some safe somewhere. But yeah, that's hilarious. And that went on forever. But he said it was the dirtiest car, because he was eating and living in the back and traveling and trying to, and you talk about somebody who didn't make money until they got much older. I mean, he really was a late bloomer financially. But there's statues of him all over and you should see him. He's buried in Cave Hill Cemetery. You'd think it was royalty back home. I mean, he's got a big plot.
Really?
Yeah,
I
we think
believe
we
that.
We think quite a bit of it. And Yum Brands, even the corporate headquarters is there in Louisville, Kentucky. So yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay.
amazing, what somebody with a creative idea can come up with. It goes from a recipe to a franchise to
Right.
unbelievable. So, which leads into a question. You also mentioned, which is absolutely true, of course, that so many people lock up this intellectual property, they get the patent, and then they do absolutely nothing with it because they thought, unlike David Osk, who did the groundwork and grounded and pounded and ran around and fought to get it into stores, a lot of people build it and they will come, and that actually doesn't happen. So, out of the successes, what do you think is the key characteristic of what the inventor does that does hit a home run? Not the quality of the idea necessarily, but what is it what behavior are they engaging in that makes them successful as far as their discovery?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to I try to explain a lot to my clients that I don't know, it ages me a bit, but this old South Park episode, I don't know if you ever heard the underwear gnome economic theory.
No, but I'll look it
No.
up because I
So
think they're very
okay,
funny.
so anyway, basically the whole premise is step one is steal underpants, step two is question mark, and it equals profit. That's their economic theory. And that's the issues. The people who can figure out that question mark. That is what determines it. So you do have inventors, and I don't want to. A lot of inventors are inventors. Like they invent. Their mind keeps jumping to something else, some problem to fix, and it's kind of hard for them because in order to truly make it work, generally you have to stick with one idea for a while. You got to see it come to market, and then you can start playing with all the other ideas. And then the question is, which one of these great ideas is the one I'm going to ride so I can develop the other ones? Because it's hard. You basically got to stick with it. I mean, it's kind of like you may have an ADHD personality, but at the end of the day, you've got to stick with this. You got to be married to the idea. This is the one that you're riding when dying with, at least for a long time, to see if it comes to fruition. I mean, we were talking about fried chicken, and I grew up in the South, so Popeyes was one. The guy Copeland was his name. My understanding is he went bankrupt like 4 or 5 times before he came up with Popeyes. So this is the kind of thing. You got to be married to the idea. You got to push it out. Um, and it helps if you have a business and your invention relates to your business. So it kind of just incorporates therein. Starting from scratch is just like starting any other business. You got to be married to it. It's not going to show dividends right away. I mean, every now and then I have clients who have red balls. Like all of a sudden they're just kind of like uh, their product is just going through the roof. That happens. Sometimes it does. But most of the time is you have to stick with this. You have to make a market for it. You have to build it. You have to source it. You have to do all these little things. And I think you and I both know I didn't start off running my own law firm. I'm amazed at how much, excuse me, for crap I got to deal with that has nothing to do with running a law firm. It's all the other stuff. And that's just literally filling out paperwork for running a law firm. It's kind of, push and go is kind of the way with law firm. If you have to manufacture, source goods, get them to market, do the sales, get it to retail, those are so many little projects that you got to do before you're even going to see the success that your product deserves. And that's why, like I say, I tell my clients first, if you don't have a business plan, don't do this. And this is highly speculative stuff because you're betting on yourself, you're betting on your idea. And for some people, it may have been better for them to put this money in the stock
Oh, yeah,
market.
great point. I had that discussion with a guy that had a bunch of rent houses. We were looking at his numbers, and he had quite a nice portfolio. But it was better. It did beat the market, but considering how many hours it took, and not just the hours, but some of the stuff he had to get involved in, we were jokingly discussing that, like it might have been better in a CD or the market, but it goes to monetization. And Austin, I think about, I know a guy, and unfortunately I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Super sharp guy, also from Kentucky. He produces fishing lures, He's got a really unique mind. He's a hardcore fisherman like I am. But he's got really got a mind for these lures. And what's interesting is he structured the deals after he did his first deal. I guess he I'm not going to say he got burned, but probably
You learn, yeah.
as all of our deals, you learn. And he's done some where he's licensed the idea. There's been some where he's gotten I guess like a celebrity fisherman to get kind of with it and put their name on it and take it in a different direction. And then he's worked with the big box stores. So people don't realize that there's a lot of different paths. It doesn't have to be a box on the shelf at Home Depot. It doesn't necessarily have to be Amazon. There's a lot of different deals, and not any one deal is you're not really constrained by any one deal. So can you give me one example of a rather something really unconventional, how they brought something to market? Or are you allowed to share any stories about your clients about one that really knocked it out of
I
the park?
don't know too. I don't know too many. I mean, they've kind of gone all over the place, but mainly it's just been, with the independent inventors, Amazon, Shopify. These are just too
Hmm.
attractive because they do make it easier. If you can
Yes.
source the product, get it developed, they will warehouse it, they will get it, they will ship it, and it might be a good place to start. I do warn my clients about things like Kickstarter. And the reason being is there are companies out there who are just, they have the money, they have the bankroll, and they have the manufacturing just waiting to go. And they look and see which Kickstarters or, those crowdfunding does very well. So they know there's somewhat of maybe of a market there, and they're going to beat you to market because you're raising money to build the product. They're going to see your success on Kickstarter, and then they're just going to build it and hit the market before you.
And Austin, I read this article. It had to be 15 years ago. This is when the phones started really getting good as far as the digital. And I won't mention what country because I don't want to get banned off of YouTube. But there were representatives for a particular company that produces pretty much everything in the world. And what they were doing is they were going to all of the big toy um, galas where prototypes were being shown. And they were so good at taking photos from every angle that they were bringing products to market before major US manufacturers were. And the manufacturers got a prototype at a show. And this other country was able to put something on a shelf at a major box store before. And that was 15 years ago, Austin. So you can imagine now with this is before the proliferation of 3D printers. So you can imagine how fast they can bring something to market now. So thank you for that bit of advice.
Yeah.
Because I guess Kickstarter, you better, have your protections in place if you're going to put it out there to the world.
Yes. And that's the other thing too, is even though we get patent application filed and they go on Kickstarter and we are doing the right thing there. The problem is that it takes a while to get your patent. So while you're going through that business, they can flood the market before you can get there. Now,
Yeah, yeah.
it can't be, sometimes I tell people, look, there's a silver lining. Say someone comes up with your idea, but you file for the patent, you get the patent, but someone's been flooding the market. What's one of the hardest things to do when you start a new product?
Well, the mar
Awareness,
oh yeah,
the
marketing is
market.
yeah. I would rather have
Right.
a bad product and good marketing than a good product and bad marketing. I hate that pains me to say that every time, but it's true.
Well, it's true, but
I'll take a mediocre product than a big marketing budget any day.
right. So if they've created a market for you and people are now aware of this product and you're able to remove it because you got your patent and now it's enforceable, they might come searching for yours. Now you've actually had someone help you develop a market way more than you possibly could have. And now you own it because your patent came in later.
Brilliant, brilliant. Now,
Yeah.
who's your
I'm not
ID?
suggesting people rely on that or encourage it, but
Yeah,
there can be a silver lining sometimes.
that's right. You've got to use, well, if somebody's scrappy and, bootstrapping their business, they need every advantage they can. Now, we did talk about earlier about at what point should people seek legal counsel, but what is the perfect client for you? I love asking guests that. Like when the phone rings and you get a particular type of client, who do you think you can move the needle for the most, the perfect person to call you?
Well, it spans the gamuts. Obviously, I work with a lot of companies where they have some R&D budget. They are constantly doing this. So they're just in the business of moving products forward. I really enjoy the independent inventor who comes up with something and is able to make it work. And that's my favorite. It's the hardest though. And then maybe that's why it's my favorite. It's like they've done it, they've got it moving, and you see that you've actually helped them build something. And it somewhat depresses me that when an inventor comes up and I think they have a good idea and they just don't get to that next step because you know hiring an attorney to I write your term paper for you. I'm doing most of the work, you're paying me for it. That hurts, but it's that, hey, you need to take those other hard steps to move this forward. I hate it when they don't. So I really want to see a highly motivated client. They're the ones who are going to get the most out of the patent process. Like I said, if you don't have a plan to get this to market, you're just going to have an expensive piece of paper on your wall. Now, maybe in the future, patents are like landmines. Maybe sometime in the future, someone starts making your product and does very well with it. Guess what? Now you can make money because you're like, you need to license my product. So there is a way, even if you don't go out and make it, that you can make money in the future, but that's only if someone happens to land right on your spot.
In Austin too, there's the power of association. Obviously, mastermind is in the name of our podcast. I encourage people because there's the people we grew up with in Louisville, Kentucky, or in the South, and they had their career path. And I love going back home and catching up with people and fishing, but I also need to go to the well and be refreshed. So I like to be around other entrepreneurs. So if somebody does have a business idea, it really helps to rub up against other motivated entrepreneurs constantly to recharge your battery. And I think these solo entrepreneurs and solo inventors, that's where they suffer because their social circle, there might be wonderful people, wonderful family, mean well, but you've really got to, I get electrified talking to other entrepreneurs. I mean, I just get excited. They have fire, I have fire, and we're stoking each other constantly. So I love that. So for those solo people that, don't let your idea die on the vine, stay motivated, get some other entrepreneurs. And there's nothing better, more exciting than to watch somebody running with an idea and really doing it. And it makes you want to run. I wrote this book. This is second edition of my first book. And last week I had a lady on, she's 18 and she just published her 22nd book. And I thought, okay, I've got to, I thought I was in fourth gear and I'm in first with the emergency brake on. I thought I got to really, well, I really appreciate your time, Austin. How can people reach out to you? Because I'm sure some people are going to be curious about taking the next step of the process.
Well, basically, they just use my name, Bonderer, which is Bonderer, patents.com, or just put Bonderer and patents in Google search. You'll find me because I'm pretty much the only guy that does this with that name, obviously. So
Sure.
that's probably the easiest way to find me. Otherwise, yeah, that's pretty much it.
One last, we did get a question and I apologize. Do you have a hard stop or do you have time for one
No,
question?
not at all. Yeah, sure.
So a friend of mine, he's actually in the chat. He's the gentleman from Mississippi. He's got an
Okay.
idea. Obviously, I won't spoil it to spoil his
Right.
IP, but he was talking about, and I believe he probably needs somebody as an injection molder to do that part. Is there, who do you go to for that? Is there one source? Do they reach out to somebody like you? Because I'm sure you've got a lot of connections in the industry, I would presume.
Actually, I don't. I leave
Okay.
that up to the client because
Okay.
you're now paying me to do stuff that you should be doing. And two,
Yes. Yes.
it's
Okay.
part of the business part.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the crawling part. If you're going to run, you got to do this. But I do help them when they do talk to the injection molding, which I suggest you do in the process because
Mhm.
I've had products. I thought it was a wonderful idea. Went through the whole thing, and then he went, "Well, I talked to the injection molding guys, and they can't make it," which I was surprised by because I looked
Mm.
at the product. I was like, "They can't make this," and he's like, "Yeah, they can't make it for some reason." So when we're started, a lot of times I'm saying, hey, go talk to some manufacturers with an NDA because they may work on your project. You can
Mhm.
sign that for the possible future business. That's their consideration of why they're going to keep your stuff secret. Entrust them, but make them sign an NDA. And then talk to them about it. And they may tell you, like, look, you're not going to be able to build this thing. Or you may have to change a little bit of this if you really want to make it. And that helps us in the patent process.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a benefit to them to give that advice to because they'd love to crank out 25 pallets of whatever that it's a
Yes.
win-win really for everybody. Well, thank you so much, Austin. If you don't mind, I'll end the stream, but we can stay on conversation here in Zoom.
All right. Talk to you.
Okay, perfect. I've just closed the live down. I've already got your
I can
link in the description, Austin, and